Hi everyone, welcome. Out here next to my house, out in the street, blocking traffic. I've already had to step aside twice for cars trying to get past me, but I had to share this lovely view of this one tree on my property that just takes on these incredible autumn colors. And I'll tell you the truth, it's not even as spectacular as it can be. I came out here a couple days ago to snap a couple photos of it, and I figured, you know what, as long as I'm coming outside to tend to the outdoor worm bag and get them fed, I would share this lovely view with you. So I'm going to go ahead and head over to the outdoor worm bag so we can get them fed. But hopefully you enjoyed this little splash of color before we head on over to feed the worms. So let's go over there now and get started. As you can see, the tree is littering my yard with leaves, so that means pretty soon we're going to have a abundant supply of leafy matter to use as bedding in our worm bin feedings, and a fair bit of work to clean it all up, but it's worth it. So I've got a meal planned for them very similar to what they got last time. More figs, but this time they're going to get coffee, and they're going to get 2 days worth of coffee. And I went around and I collected a good many leaves, and I crushed a whole bunch of them up to fit as many as I could into this little pot. And what you can see over here is a brick that I laid out on top of our covering, which I used to protect the system, because you might remember last time we were in here 14 days ago, we returned after only 8 days because we had noticed something had been rummaging around within the system, even to the point where it had jostled the top covering aside to give itself access to what was going on down there. And I wanted to protect it, so I put a little bit of a weight on there to keep the critter out of there. So I've got my glove. I'm just bringing myself around to get seated over here. Yeah, my fairly popular compost barrel is right over here next to us too. That's where we typically recruit worms from when we populate this system. And this is probably the system out of all my systems that has the fewest number of worms living in it, and that's based on our collective averaged estimate of how many worms live in here, which is fine. And you know, I did actually contemplate coming back in here, as we've done in previous years, to try to bolster the size of the population. And we're still holding together. And try to bring the population up to a somewhat greater number, but that never happened. You know, we kind of settled with the number of worms that are thought to occupy this bin, and offhand I don't remember what it is, but I do have two systems, one down in the wormery and this one up here, in which it's thought that we've got fewer than 1,000 worms occupying it. But you know, after 139 days in service, only a day away from 20 weeks of age, this system, I don't know, it does seem to me like we've probably seen a little increase to the number of worms occupying this system. The one thing I did do though during those 2 weeks since we were last in here together was I did come in here with my garden hose at one point, because we've been going through a little bit of a dry spell. There's been really no rain whatsoever. So I wanted to make sure that these guys have the moisture they need to remain comfortable. So I didn't even remove the top. All I did was come in here and I just sprayed the water around and around to let it come in around the sides, and then even along that crack along the top covering, I came in and I just sprayed there too, to hopefully allow some moisture to seep down into the system. And I gotta tell you, you know, it's so nice to feel this type of material. So many times in my wormery, I somehow manage to let my systems get overly damp, and then the stuff that would probably otherwise be really nice, loose, easily flowing castings start to get muddy and clumped together, and it just becomes such a nasty, unmanageable mess. And then it takes a long time to recover from it, and somehow the system just never seems to recover. Because as the material starts to dry out, it starts to allow itself to become a little bit more flaky, but somehow certain bits just sort of cement together, and you never really achieve a really nice outcome after the material has had a chance to get really overly damp and muddy and stick together. So I'm really glad to see how things in here look. Last time, instead of using a natural type of a bedding like leaves, I took that piece of newspaper that was resting out on the top, and I used it as sort of a little container. I folded it over into a little bundle which held all this shredded paper cardboard that I bought up from down in the wormery. And I believe I did something very similar during the previous check-in too, because the remaining piece of paper that was used to transport that little bundle of bedding up from the wormery was just thrown down as part of the feeding last time. So it's nice to see that they've got a sufficient amount of yet unused bedding down here in the system. So I don't know, it's just it is very nice just to feel how loose and free-flowing the material in this system is. Just such a stark contrast to some of the other systems in which I have unfortunately allowed moisture to dominate, and I've allowed things to get muddy. So I've been doing my best to try to improve that in my systems by being a little bit more generous with bedding, in the hopes that I can ward off that undesirable clumping and unmanageableness of the material. So we've opened up a pretty nice hole here, into which we can come with our little collection of shredded leaves. So here you can see what I did to make it all fit into this pot. I crushed a good bit of it up, and the stuff is going in dry. And it is true that some of the stuff we're giving them, the figs, are going to bring with them a good bit of moisture. I mean, for that matter, this stuff was sitting in a plastic bag, and you can even see the shape of the plastic bag because the stuff was virtually fluid already. And it was so unusual to see how these figs just totally just transform from being a little piece of fruit into just a little puddle. So my hope is that once this food begins to thaw out and melt, it'll dampen all the surrounding materials. And you know, here's the coffee we're going to give them. Some of it at least, because here's more. Let's drop that in here as well. Alrighty. And a little tradition down in my wormery, but a tradition that doesn't really get played out very frequently out here in the outdoor worm bag, is the use of what I refer to as feeding zone indicators. I guess because in this system, feedings always pretty much occur right down the middle in my bins. Sometimes I feed in the middle, sometimes I feed in the pockets or the corners, other times I just feed on the opposite edges. But in this system, it just seems sensible to position their food right down the middle each time, and that's just the way I feed. So we're going to be giving these guys 2 feeding zone indicators today after we cover up. So let's start bringing in some material with which we can cover up the feeding zone and level off. I really hope these worms appreciate this lovely dose of bedding we just gave them. I mean, it is the type of bedding that worms over millions and millions of years have evolved. So I would assume that fallen, decomposing leaves are probably right up their alley as far as a preferred food source and bedding source, because, you know, starts out as bedding, but it all eventually turns to food. So you can hear a horn alarming in the background. It was doing the same thing earlier, and I waited until it ended before I started rolling. But it looks like they're having trouble with their alarm system, wherever it is and whoever it is. Ah, there it goes. It's been turned off. I'm not even sure if you guys can hear it, so maybe I'm just rambling on about stuff that you're not even hearing, but I think we're at the end of our check-in. And you know, I did actually notice, besides that invasion that we came in to check on last time 14 days ago, it did seem like, despite the fact that I had placed a brick out here to weigh down the top covering, it did seem like something had returned to start trying to reach in these little gaps around the top cover to see if it can get its little mangy claws onto something to eat. I'm not sure if they're going after the foods I've put in here or if they're going after the worms themselves, but I am glad that I've got that nice heavy brick to rest out here on top to keep the system protected from further invasion. But I think we're pretty much done here. So all I've got left to do is a few things to do, such as putting stuff away and cleaning things up, but I'm not going to waste your time with that because that's boring. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.